heels of the Bills' second preseason game against the Steelers. An unfortunate first-half performance. Some things got cleaned up in the second half, but penalties and turnovers compromised the effort. Here to dice up some of the tape with us is our good friend, senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell. We'll be back for another season. Greg, good to have you with us. You had Sunday and Monday to chop this up, along with probably 14 other games you were looking at, holed up in your little cave over there. Why don't you just give us your overall takeaway from Buffalo's performance and what compromised it in your mind?
I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I have a very difficult time with preseason because I know too much about what coaches want to do and how they view preseason. And every coach is a little different. But I'm sure that, people are probably thinking now that the Bills are not very good and that it's going to be a bad year. You see that with a lot of teams throughout the league. I would say that, to me, probably the biggest concern, if you want to really talk about this in any meaningful way, would just be the mental part, the penalties. To me, that's something that, when you play, and Steve, you could speak to this better, you just want to see things executed. To me, it's not the score of the game. It's not any of that stuff. You just want to see things executed the way they're supposed to be executed, whatever the result then of the play turns out, because there's another team on the field as well. But pre-snap penalties are just inexcusable at any time. And to me, that would be the biggest takeaway, not the score of the game, not, there are some other things we could talk about that I think, having spent this summer watching a lot of Bills from last year as well, there were a couple of things that I think need to be dealt with and that could turn into problems. But I think the mental part to me would be the biggest issue.
That would be by the biggest issue. I mean, it's the most egregious problem with the team. I mean, they just
Correct.
didn't. They were mentally checked out. I made the point. It looked like they were waiting for opening day rather than having any desire to play the Steelers in the preseason.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But if you want to get to things that and I don't want to jump on you here, Brownie, if you had specific things, but I think there's a couple of things because, like I said, I've watched a ton of Josh Allen from last year. I watched a ton of their defense from last year. I did that this summer. So it's not as if I just did that in the last 20 minutes. But I think there are some things that I think probably, would be concerns for the coaching staff and the organization. They might not announce it publicly, but I think it's pretty much out there if you watch the tape. I think offensively, I've been impressed with Torrance through 2 games. He had some, a few troublesome snaps this week, but I think he's going to end up being the starting guard. That would be my opinion. I could be dead wrong. I know Ryan Bates has been there, but I think Torrance was a good pick, and I think he's shown that he can line up and play. He has not been overmatched. But I think pass protection is a little bit of an issue. As I said, I watched last year. I think right tackle is a little bit of an issue because you have to understand that much of this game and the way a lot of coaches talk is played on third down. And when you play on third down as an offensive coach, you want to be able to send all 5 eligible receivers out. That's the way all offensive coaches think. You want to get the maximum for your buck, so to speak, because you don't want to have 3 receivers out against 6 or 7 in coverage. That's not a real good situation to be in from a numbers perspective. And, in watching a lot of their third downs last year, they often had to keep it back and at times a tight end in. And, I'm just curious when it gets to be 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9, and obviously that happens in every game multiple times, how are they going to deal with that? Because I don't know whether it's going to be Spencer Brown. Who knows how this is going to play out? But they're, right tackle would be one position I think they're going to have to find an answer there, or they're going to have to help, and you don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, and it looks like the middle linebacker role is going to get pushed to the final preseason game as well before a decision is made there. A.J. Klein is back in the mix now, due in part to the injury to Terrell Bernard, who remains out with a hamstring injury. It looked like Tyrell Dotson got pinned inside on the long touchdown run by Jaylen Warren, along with Matt Milano. Actually, both linebackers got taken out of the contain on that play on the edge of the defense. What has been your take, on how that linebacker situation has unfolded?
Yeah, again, I'm not in camp every day. You guys are in the building. Not that you're getting inside information. I doubt that Sean McDermott is telling you his innermost thoughts. But I would really think down the road, and maybe I'll be dead wrong. I think Williams is going to end up being the guy, and maybe not week one, but I think he's going to be the guy. He plays. The big question is, if it's Williams, you're playing with two smallish stacked backers. And that's a question for sure. So I'm not going to sit here and say, that is what's going to happen. But Williams brings a lot of energy. He's a more explosive athlete than either Klein or Dotson. I really liked his tape coming out of Tulane. I don't know the mental part because I'm not there every day, so I don't know how that's going. But I think if they had to choose week one between Klein and Dotson, my sense is, just based on the fact that they both have track records in the league and both have track records with the Bills, it would not surprise me if it's A.J. Klein.
Right. A.J. Klein has been a guy that has been so dependable. I mean, he left, came back, and he was the guy that really carried the load this last Saturday night as well. Not for nothing, though, he is a guy that offenses go after. Have you seen that?
Yep. Yeah, well, the thing about Klein is this, and I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of coaches, and one of the things I always hear from defensive coaches is I can trust him, and I think you can trust A.J. Klein, even though he's not a high-level athlete, Steve, and even though teams will look at him certainly in the passing game as someone you can attack, whether it's man or zone. There's no question. The guy's been in the league a long time now. He's been a full-time starter at times, but some might say he's a little more of a journeyman type than a full-time guy. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with playing in the NFL, Steve, as you know, for 8 or 10 years. I'm not knocking that at all. That is unbelievable to be able to do that.
Right.
But I would think that when push comes to shove, because of the trust factor, that it will probably be Klein. But you're right. Teams will go after him, and then we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, you're right. It is. Yeah, I recommend it. It's good work if you can get it. Being in the NFL for a decade, it's a plus. But you're right. It does take a special kind of person to be in there. And we were talking earlier about the cornerback spot for the Bills. It looks like Dane Jackson is going to hold off Kaiir Elam and Christian Benford for the cornerback 2 spot opposite Tre'Davious White. A little bit reminiscent of Levi Wallace here in Buffalo, where they brought player after player after player in to try and unseat him as the other cornerback 2, and they couldn't get it done. Dane Jackson looks like he's got a stranglehold on it again.
Yeah, I mean, again, he started obviously at the field corner opposite White, who's predominantly the boundary corner. Elam has played pretty much only boundary corner. He's certainly not going to start ahead of Tre'Davious White. So the question is, again, I'm not there, so I don't know what's going on a day-to-day basis with Elam. He's certainly the most physically talented of the three. He gives up some plays here and there, but he is physical and competitive. Certainly in the run game, he tackles, which I know for Sean is very important. I guess I'm waiting like everybody else for it all to come together for him. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but he's certainly the most physically gifted of the three.
Yeah, I think the way Steve and I look at it, it's not like Dane Jackson has been far and away better than the other two, but they haven't outperformed him, if that makes sense. And so I think they're going to give it to the veteran player who they've seen on the field the most and probably who Sean McDermott trusts the most going forward.
And if I could just quickly add on an unrelated subject, not outside corner, but Jack Teron Johnson is such a good, even in the preseason, the way he tackles in the run game. I mean, that's why they can play nickel so much. I assume they'll probably do the same thing this year. I know with Sean now more in charge of the defense, we'll probably see some tweaks here and there, a few differences. I would doubt it'll change with the personnel because they really don't have 3 linebackers that they're going to feel comfortable putting out there. So Johnson, to me, he's just a really good football player.
When you get around and turn it over to the front 4 for the Bills, it's a place where they seem to have a lot of depth. And, you've got, obviously, you're kind of tapping your feet waiting on Von Miller, to get healthy. Leonard Floyd. What did you see from the defensive ends and maybe the defensive tackles as well? How do you see that playing out up front? Are the Bills as deep as we think they are, or?
I would think the main question will be pass rush in passing situations. Obviously, Von Miller can provide that. I don't know about Leonard Floyd, what he's been going through with camp, if he's someone that they're going to count on. He's shown through his career at times that he can be an edge pass rusher. He certainly has the body type for it. A lot of their other DNs are not really one-on-one pass rushers. Epinesa is not really that guy. Basham is not really that guy. Basham is, the Bills are an over front as their base front, which means they line up to the strong side of the offense, to the tight end side. And Basham is predominantly the strong side D end. He's not the open side D end because Basham is not really an edge pass rusher. So, again, I don't know how they see him in their overall schematics. Epinesa has played on the open side. I guess they're hoping with his body type that he can continue to improve and be an edge pass rusher. But, one of the things I thought stood out a year ago, and until we play real games this year, they just have not been able to have, to me, without Von Miller, a real consistent four-man D-line pass rush.
You already mentioned one member of the draft class in Dorian Williams. Justin Shorter showed up on Saturday. He had a very quiet preseason opener, but then finishes Saturday night as the leading receiver, and I realize some of his playing time came late, presumably against third-teamers. But, he had the touchdown, on that route to the post. Just your thoughts about what he was able to show and how that can help convince the coaching staff what he can be for them in the offense.
Yeah, Shorter's a fascinating guy. I don't know if you know his background, Brownie, but he came out of New Jersey as a top 20 recruit in the nation and the number one wide receiver prospect. Went to Penn State, then transferred to Florida. Never quite became a great college player, but he showed flashes at Florida where he ran by people. I mean, you're dealing with a guy that's 6'4", over 220 pounds, ridiculously long arms, incredibly big hands, and he can run. So the question is, what can that mean in the NFL? Ideally, you'd like to think that he's a big body who can get on top of people. When I watched his college tape, one of the things that kept jumping out to me was, and again, he obviously played wide receiver, in the preseason here, was given his size, is he a true wideout or is he almost one of those hybrids? And, a guy that you can use in different ways and not necessarily as a true outside receiver. And I don't know how they see him, but he certainly has traits that you like with that size, that length, and he can move.
One of the things that's happened over the last couple of weeks is Andy Isabella was signed after he was released by Baltimore, and he has really caught a lot of people's eye, mostly because of his quickness and his speed. And he has not disappointed. I mean, he has yet to kind of make a false move, right? So it's he keeps climbing up in his importance and his intrigue for the Bills, making the Bills roster. What can you tell us about what you know about Andy Isabella?
Yeah, I remember watching him coming out of UMass. He could run. He's quick. He's got great lateral quickness. He's one of those guys, Steve. I don't know why it hasn't worked, because I don't know the kid. I don't know the situations he's been in. But he's got, this route we're watching right now is exactly what he is. He's got, and that's against a linebacker, obviously, but still, he's got that great stop and start, lateral quickness, got a lot of juice to him. He's a really intriguing guy. To me, and Ken Dorsey's now in his second year as a coordinator, and he obviously, I'm sure, learned some things from his first year. And you're not going to see anything they really want to do in the preseason. But I'm so curious now with pieces like perhaps an Isabella, like a Dalton Kincaid, who we saw this week as well, make catches and get open pretty easily. Even Diggs, who can line up inside or outside. There's a lot of movable chess pieces to me in this offense. And with Dorsey now in his second year, I'm very curious to see what they do.
Yeah, you mentioned Kincaid. He was going to be my next question because I think after he made his third reception, we're doing the radio broadcast, and Eric Wood and I are saying, okay, let's get him out of the game now. We've seen enough. We're convinced. Let's just get him out of the game while he's still healthy. But I think he is – we suspected this might be the case. I think we've seen evidence of it through the course of the summer and now the preseason, that he is going to be an easy button throw answer for Josh that he really didn't have consistently week over week last year in the middle of the field.
No, and that's why I was making the point with Kincaid, maybe, assuming Isabella makes the team if he continues to perform well. You have two guys, I think, Brownie, who could possibly fill that role where, that's what, because don't forget, look, we are all enamored with good reason with Josh Allen's ability to make special plays. But when you get right down to it, and Steve, you know this even better than I do from having played, the key plays in games are very often when it's 3rd and 7 and you get an 8-yard gain. Those plays you're not going to see on the highlights, but those are important plays in games, really important plays. And, I think that the Kincaids, the Isabellas, I think they can make those kinds of plays. And I think those are absolutely critical for an offense.
What do you see as trends in the league around? You watch all these preseason games, and certainly the Bills look to, with a draft pick like Kincaid, they're probably going to have to evolve away from only 3%, 12 people, 12 personnel, that kind of thing. Are there any trends you've spotted? I know teams don't show much in the preseason.
Yeah, not necessarily preseason, but I think you hit on a really good point there about a trend that's definite because of what the college game is giving to the NFL. It's giving to the NFL guys who are quote-unquote tight ends, but who are detached players. And they're not necessarily tight ends who are attached and, are just blockers. So what that does is it creates opportunities now in the pass game. We saw that, and again, it's just preseason, but we saw what the Giants did with Darren Waller. And then he's that guy. You can line him up outside. Kincaid's that guy. You can see him lined up at boundary X on the backside of trips. And it really helps an offense because it gives the quarterback a lot of pre-snap information. Then you get these guys that can move. They're motion guys as well. And you're seeing more motion throughout the league as well, Steve. That's a trend you're seeing as well. Now, defenses have caught up to that, and it's not like it used to be years ago where, hey, if a guy went in motion and somebody ran with him, that automatically means it's man. Defenses have kind of gotten smarter than that. And even if they send a guy running with a motion guy, it doesn't automatically mean it's man. But the point I'm making is you're getting more motion in general in the league. And, I think that's a trend that we'll definitely continue to see.
Greg, the tackle position for the Bills took a bit of a hit over the past week. Brandon Shell surprisingly decided to retire. He was kind of veteran insurance at the right tackle spot. And then Tommy Doyle goes down to a season-ending knee injury, less than a year removed from his previous knee injury, and this time it's the other knee. So it's unfortunate. We do expect the Bills to add a player in the coming days at that spot just to kind of refortify the ranks. But this is a tremendous opportunity for Ryan Vandermark, the first-year player out of UConn, who's got prototype height and length. How long of a look did you get at him in the Pittsburgh game?
I watched every snap. So he was a left tackle in college. He was a 4-year starter at left tackle at UConn. And you hit it right on the head. He's a plus athlete. He's got great length. I think he looks the part. He's got good quickness off the ball. He's efficient moving laterally. I think what ultimately would need to happen, number one, can he play right tackle? They're two different positions, right tackle and left tackle. Obviously, left tackle is Dawkins. But they'll probably give Vandermark, who played only left tackle against the Steelers, he may get some opportunities now at right tackle. I think he needs to get stronger to generate more power in the run game, and that would help him anchor more effectively in pass pro. But as you said, Brownie, and you've nailed it, he looks the part. I mean, he is long, body-wise. His arm length is good. He's a plus athlete. I wasn't charting every snap the way a coach would, but I did watch every snap closely. I don't know if he truly had a bad snap where you went, oh, that was a tough one. Like I said, I'm sure an O-line coach, I'm sure Aaron Cromer, who knows more about the specifics of O-line play than I do, there's much to coach up. But I didn't think he was overmatched. Now, it's easy for people to say, oh, well, he's playing against second and third teamers. But, that doesn't matter. You want to see a guy's traits. You want to see him perform. You want to see him execute what he's asked to execute.
Yeah, and certainly he's going to get more opportunity this week probably as well. Also, I wanted to ask you about this guy, Courage. I thought it was
Yeah.
Courage, but Courage. What do you say about him, number 75 of the Bills, who got in and played some right tackle and some left tackle? I've seen him take reps at both.
I got to tell you, Steve, I was really surprised he was undrafted. I watched him at Florida, and I thought he was a pro prospect. And again, you never know how guys see a guy. I mean, he's not a superior athlete. He doesn't jump off the film where you go, man, that guy is a really good prospect. But I thought he was just one of those really solid players who could be in the NFL. Now, I didn't necessarily see him as a big-time starter, but I thought he could. Number one, I thought he was a more than draftable player, and I thought he could be one of those guys who could be, if you keep 8 or 9 O-linemen, that he could easily be one of those guys, and you could plug him in at either a tackle or a guard if need be. So I imagine he's going to get more looks this week as well.
Greg, thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it. Thanks for breaking some of these guys down for us. We will catch up with you very soon.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Thanks so much.